Leo Thompson wasn't the kind of person who stood out in a crowd. He worked as a janitor at Hartley Manufacturing, a big factory that made parts for cars. Every day, Leo cleaned the machines, swept the floors, and emptied trash bins. It wasn't glamorous work, but he did it well, and without complaint. At 47 years old, Leo had spent most of his life taking care of others. He was the guy who fixed a coworker's broken chair or stayed late to help clean up after a big project. People liked him, but they didn't really notice him. And that was fine with Leo. He preferred staying in the background, quietly doing his job. One Thursday morning, Leo noticed a flyer taped to the break room wall. It was an announcement about a blood drive happening at the factory. The flyer said the local hospital desperately needed donations, and employees were encouraged to participate. Leo hesitated. He hadn't donated blood in years, and he wasn't feeling great. His back hurt from lifting heavy equipment earlier that week. But something about the flyer stuck with him. Maybe my pint could save someone, he thought. What's one little bit of me compared to a whole life? So, during his lunch break, Leo walked over to the donation area set up in the cafeteria. There were a few other employees there, chatting nervously as nurses prepared needles and bags. Leo sat down, rolled up his sleeve, and let them take his blood. When it was over, he felt a little dizzy but proud of himself. As he left the room, he muttered under his breath, "Hope this helps somebody." What Leo didn't know was that his simple act of kindness would change not only another person's life, but his own as well. While Leo went back to his usual routine at the factory, unaware of the impact of his donation, a crisis was unfolding elsewhere. Across town, in a sleek office building, Daniel Hartley, the CEO of Hartley Manufacturing, was rushing through another busy day. Known for his sharp suits and even sharper mind, Daniel was the kind of leader who thrived under pressure. But lately, the stress had been getting to him. That afternoon, during an important meeting with investors, Daniel suddenly felt lightheaded. His vision blurred, and before anyone could react, he collapsed onto the conference table. Panic erupted as his team called an ambulance. At the hospital, doctors discovered that Daniel had suffered severe internal bleeding caused by a rare condition. Without immediate treatment, his chances of survival were slim. The medical team worked quickly, but they faced a major problem. Daniel needed a specific blood type that was hard to find. Time was running out. Fortunately, the hospital had recently received a batch of donations from Hartley Manufacturing's blood drive. Among them was a perfect match. 1 pint of blood donated just hours earlier by an anonymous employee. That single donation stabilized Daniel and gave the doctors enough time to perform surgery and save his life. When Daniel woke up days later, weak but alive, he learned about the stranger whose blood had kept him going. "Someone at my own company saved me," he said quietly to his doctor. "Do we know who it was?" The doctor shook his head. "All we have is a donor ID number. Whoever it was chose to remain anonymous." Daniel leaned back against his pillows, deep in thought. For years, he'd focused solely on growing his business, often forgetting the people who made it run. The factory workers, janitors, and staff members like the one who had just saved his life. Now, lying in that hospital bed, he realized how disconnected he'd become from the very foundation of his success. Determined to thank the person who had given him a second chance, Daniel asked his HR department to track down the donor using the ID number. They promised to look into it, but all they could tell him so far was that the donor was listed simply as employee number 427. Back at the factory, Leo continued his daily work, completely unaware of the dramatic turn his small act of kindness had taken. To him, donating blood had been just another good deed, something he hoped might help someone, but nothing more than that. Meanwhile, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that this mystery donor was someone special, someone worth finding. Little did either of them know, their paths were about to cross in ways neither could have imagined. A few weeks after the blood drive, Hartley Manufacturing hosted a company-wide luncheon to thank everyone who had participated. It was held in the factory's large cafeteria, decorated with balloons and banners that read, "Thank you for giving life." Most attendees were managers, supervisors, and office staff, the people Daniel interacted with regularly. Leo almost didn't go. He felt out of place at events like this. Fancy gatherings weren't really his thing. But one of his co-workers convinced him, saying, "Come on, Leo. You donated too. You deserve to be there as much as anyone else." So, reluctantly, Leo showed up, wearing his cleanest pair of jeans and a button-up shirt he rarely took out of the closet. As the room filled with chatter and laughter, Daniel stepped up to the microphone to give a speech. Dressed in a tailored suit, he looked every bit the powerful CEO, but there was something different about him today. His usual confidence seemed tempered by gratitude, and his voice carried a tone of humility. "I want to start by saying thank you," Daniel began, scanning the crowd. "Every single person here made a difference by participating in the blood drive. Because of your generosity, lives were saved, including mine." The room fell silent. Employees exchanged surprised glances as Daniel explained how he'd collapsed during a meeting and been rushed to the hospital. "Doctors told me I wouldn't have made it without a specific blood type match," he continued. "And that match came from someone right here in this room. An anonymous donor who gave selflessly, without expecting anything in return." Daniel paused, his gaze sweeping over the sea of faces. "I don't know who you are yet, but I owe you my life. Whoever you are, please know that I'll never forget what you've done for me and for this company." Applause erupted, and Leo clapped along with everyone else, feeling a lump rise in his throat. He hadn't thought much about his donation since that day. It was just something small he'd done. But hearing Daniel speak so sincerely made him realize its significance. Still, he kept quiet, assuming someone else must have been the hero. After the speech, Daniel mingled with employees, shaking hands and thanking them personally. When he spotted Leo lingering near the exit, trying to slip away unnoticed, something about the man caught his eye. There was a kindness in Leo's face, a quiet strength that stood out among the polished smiles of the higher-ups. Curious, Daniel approached him. "Hi, I'm Daniel Hartley," he said, extending his hand. Leo hesitated before shaking it. "Leo Thompson," he replied, his voice soft. "I'm just, the janitor." "Well, Leo, I wanted to say thank you for being part of the blood drive," Daniel said warmly. "It means a lot, not just to me, but to everyone here." Leo shrugged modestly. "It wasn't a big deal, just doing my part." Something about Leo's humility struck Daniel. As they talked briefly, Daniel noticed how genuine and grounded Leo seemed, so different from the corporate types he usually dealt with. Before parting ways, Daniel handed Leo a business card. "If you ever need anything at all, please don't hesitate to reach out," Daniel said sincerely. "You've already done more for me than I can put into words." Leo accepted the card, unsure what to say. Once Daniel walked away, he tucked the card into his pocket and forgot about it, thinking nothing would come of their brief conversation. But Daniel didn't forget. In fact, he found himself wondering if Leo might be the mysterious donor he'd been searching for. After the luncheon, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that Leo Thompson was more than just a janitor who happened to attend the event. Something about him felt familiar. His quiet humility, his calm presence, and the way he seemed so comfortable staying in the background. Daniel decided to dig deeper. Back at his office, he asked HR for a list of all employees who had participated in the blood drive, cross-referencing it with the hospital records they'd shared confidentially. It didn't take long to narrow down the possibilities. When Daniel saw Leo's name next to the matching blood type, his suspicions were confirmed. Leo was the man who had saved his life. Daniel sat back in his chair, stunned. Of all the people in the company, the executives, engineers, and managers, it was the janitor who had given him a second chance. The realization hit him hard, forcing him to confront how little he truly knew about the people working under him. He resolved to personally thank Leo, not as a CEO thanking an employee, but as one human being grateful to another. A few days later, Daniel invited Leo to his private office. Leo arrived nervously, unsure why the CEO would want to see him. Was he in trouble? Had he done something wrong? "Leo, please, have a seat," Daniel said warmly, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. "I wanted to talk to you about something important." Leo sat down, gripping the arms of the chair tightly. "Okay. What's this about?" Daniel leaned forward, his expression serious yet kind. Do you remember donating blood a few weeks ago? Leo nodded slowly. Yeah, I did. Why? Well, Daniel hesitated, choosing his words carefully. That donation saved my life. I was the one who needed your blood. Without it, I wouldn't be here today. Leo's eyes widened in shock. Wait, you're the guy who collapsed? That was you. Yes, Daniel admitted, his voice softening. And I've been trying to find out who donated ever since. When I realized it was you, I had to tell you myself. Thank you, Leo. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. For a moment, Leo didn't know what to say. He looked down at his hands, overwhelmed by the weight of Daniel's gratitude. Finally, he managed to speak. I didn't do it for recognition. I just thought maybe it could help someone. I didn't realize it was you. I know, Daniel said with a small smile. And that's what makes it even more incredible. You gave without expecting anything in return. That's rare these days, and it's something I deeply admire. The two men sat in silence for a while, the enormity of the moment hanging between them. Then Daniel spoke again, his tone thoughtful. Leo, I want to ask you something. Have you ever thought about doing more around here? About stepping into a role where you could make an even bigger impact? Leo frowned, confused. What do you mean? I mean, I'd like to offer you a position as a liaison between our workers and management, Daniel explained. You've been here for years, and everyone respects you. You understand the challenges our employees face better than anyone, including me. I think you could help bridge the gap between us and create a better workplace for everyone. Leo blinked, taken aback. Me? A liaison? I'm just a janitor, Mr. Hartley. I don't know if I'm cut out for that. You're exactly the person we need, Daniel insisted. This isn't about titles or qualifications. It's about trust, empathy, and leadership. Those are qualities you already have in spades. All I'm asking is that you consider it. Leo hesitated, unsure whether he was ready for such a big change. But as he thought about it, he realized this could be an opportunity to make a real difference. Not just for himself, but for his coworkers too. After some encouragement from Daniel, he agreed to give it a try. Over the next few months, Leo stepped into his new role with surprising ease. His natural ability to listen and solve problems quickly earned him respect not only among factory workers but also within the executive team. Employees began approaching him with concerns, knowing he would advocate for them fairly. Meanwhile, Daniel learned valuable lessons from Leo about leading with compassion and valuing every member of the workforce equally. Their friendship deepened as well. What started as a professional relationship grew into a genuine bond. Daniel often sought Leo's advice, amazed by the wisdom he offered despite their vastly different backgrounds. And Leo, in turn, found inspiration in Daniel's willingness to grow and change. Together, they launched initiatives aimed at improving working conditions, increasing wages, and supporting underserved communities. The factory became known not only for its products but also for its progressive policies and inclusive culture. All thanks to the partnership between a CEO and a janitor who had once been strangers. As months turned into years, the impact of Leo and Daniel's collaboration became undeniable. Hartley Manufacturing was no longer just a factory. It had evolved into a beacon of innovation, compassion, and community support. The changes they implemented together didn't happen overnight, but each step forward brought measurable improvements that benefited everyone involved. Leo thrived in his role as a liaison between workers and management. His office, a small, cozy space near the factory floor, became a safe haven for employees seeking advice or assistance. Whether it was negotiating fairer schedules, advocating for better safety measures, or simply lending an ear to someone having a tough day, Leo handled every situation with patience and care. Workers affectionately nicknamed him the heart of the factory. They knew they could count on him to speak up for them, and his presence fostered a sense of unity and trust throughout the workplace. For the first time in years, morale soared. People felt seen, heard, and valued not just as cogs in a machine, but as individuals contributing to something greater. Daniel, too, underwent a profound transformation. Working alongside Leo taught him lessons he'd never learned in business school. He realized that true leadership wasn't about authority or profit margins. It was about empathy, humility, and empowering others. Inspired by Leo's example, Daniel began visiting the factory floor regularly, talking directly with workers and learning about their challenges firsthand. These interactions humanized him in ways he hadn't anticipated, earning him newfound respect from employees who once saw him as distant and unapproachable. Together, Leo and Daniel spearheaded several groundbreaking initiatives. Employee wellness programs. They introduced health screenings, mental health resources, and fitness classes to ensure workers stayed physically and emotionally healthy. Education scholarships. Recognizing that many employees dreamed of advancing their careers, they created scholarships for workers and their families to pursue higher education or vocational training. Community outreach. Drawing inspiration from Leo's lifelong commitment to helping others, they partnered with local organizations to provide job training, food banks, and mentorship programs for underserved populations. These efforts not only improved life within the factory, but also strengthened ties with the surrounding community. Hartley Manufacturing became more than just a company. It became a force for good, setting an example for other businesses to follow. For Leo, the changes were deeply personal. Growing up, he'd always felt invisible, like his contributions didn't matter. Now, he stood at the center of a movement that celebrated the dignity of labor and the power of teamwork. He often reflected on how far he'd come since that fateful day when he'd rolled up his sleeve to donate blood. Back then, he'd thought it was just a small act. But now, he understood that even the simplest gestures could create waves of change. Daniel, meanwhile, found a renewed sense of purpose. Once driven solely by ambition, he now measured success not by quarterly earnings reports, but by the smiles on his employees' faces and the stories of lives transformed. He often joked that Leo had saved him twice, first with his blood, and then by teaching him what really mattered in life. Their partnership proved that greatness isn't defined by titles or wealth. It's defined by the connections we forge and the legacies we leave behind. And though their journeys started in vastly different places, they ended up walking side by side, united by shared values and a vision for a brighter future. Years later, Hartley Manufacturing stood as a testament to the power of kindness and collaboration. The factory had grown into one of the most respected companies in the region, not because of its profits, but because of its people. Employees spoke proudly about working there, knowing they were part of a company that valued them beyond their output. Customers trusted the brand, aware that it represented integrity and care for the community. Leo's role as a liaison had evolved over time, and he eventually became a mentor to younger workers stepping into leadership positions. Though he never sought recognition, his name became synonymous with compassion and fairness. Workers often said, "If Leo believes in you, you can believe in yourself too." Daniel, now retired from day-to-day operations, remained active in philanthropy and advocacy work. He credited much of his success and personal growth to Leo's influence. In interviews, he frequently recounted the story of the blood donation that brought them together, reminding audiences that even the smallest acts of generosity could have life-changing consequences. One evening, during a retirement party held in Leo's honor, Daniel delivered a heartfelt speech. Standing before a room filled with employees, friends, and family, he raised his glass and began to speak. "When I think about Hartley Manufacturing today," Daniel said, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "I don't just see machines or products. I see people. People who build, create, dream, and inspire. And at the heart of all this is one man, Leo Thompson." He turned to face Leo, who sat quietly at a table, looking slightly embarrassed by the attention. "Leo, you saved my life. Not just physically, but spiritually. You reminded me what it means to lead with humility and purpose. Because of you, our company is stronger, our community is better, and I am a better person." The room erupted in applause as Daniel stepped aside, allowing others to share their own stories of how Leo had touched their lives. One by one, co-workers took the microphone, recounting moments when Leo had gone out of his way to help them. Whether it was fixing a broken piece of equipment, offering advice during tough times, or simply being present when they needed someone to lean on. When it was finally Leo's turn to speak, he stood slowly, gripping the edges of the podium. For a moment, he looked overwhelmed by the love and gratitude surrounding him. Then, with a deep breath, he began. "I've always believed that we're put on this earth to take care of each other," Leo said softly, his voice carrying across the quiet room. "When I donated blood that day, I didn't think much of it. I thought, what's 1 pint? Maybe it'll help someone. But I never imagined it would bring me here, to this incredible family we've built together." He paused, glancing around the room at familiar faces. Life has a funny way of connecting us in ways we don't expect. Sometimes the smallest things we do, like giving a little bit of ourselves, can create ripples that change the world. That's why I encourage all of you to keep showing up for each other. Keep caring. Keep believing. Because you never know whose life you might save, or how far your kindness will go. As the crowd cheered, tears glistened in many eyes, including Daniel's. The evening ended with laughter, hugs, and promises to carry forward the legacy of compassion that Leo and Daniel had started. The story closes with a poignant reminder. No act of kindness is ever wasted. Whether it's donating blood, lending a listening ear, or standing up for someone in need, every gesture contributes to a larger tapestry of connection and care. Through Leo and Daniel's journey, we see that humanity binds us all together, and that even the humblest among us can spark extraordinary change. And so, the tale of the janitor and the CEO becomes more than just a story, it becomes a lesson. A lesson that reminds us to look beyond titles, appearances, and differences, and to recognize the inherent value in every human being. After all, it's not where we start that defines us. It's the lives we touch along the way.